Millionaire takes Mistress to luxury dinner, gets shocked when he sees ex-wife dining with a CEO. Natalie Caldwell thought her tumultuous divorce from Ethan Sinclair was the end of all heartbreak. She had already walked through the fire, burned by betrayal, scorched by humiliation, and left standing in the ashes of a love she once believed was unshakable. She'd endured the crushing betrayal, the shame of gossip in their ritzy social circle, and the sting of watching her ex-husband flaunt his newfound life of luxury, with a seductive mistress at his side. Every magazine headline, every whispered conversation at charity galas, every paparazzi photo of Ethan draped in another woman's embrace had been a fresh wound until she forced herself to feel nothing at all. Now, months later, a chance encounter in the glittering hall of a five-star restaurant is about to overturn everything. They thought it was settled because on the very night Ethan struts in, Mistress on his arm, exuding the arrogance of a man who believes he's won, he finds Natalie not just surviving, but thriving. Laughing across the table from a powerful CEO. Not lonely, not broken, but radiant. And that realization hits like a punch to the gut. Sparks will fly, old wounds will tear open, and shocking secrets will surface. Natalie Caldwell had been raised with all the right manners, attended all the right schools, and lived with every expectation that she would lead a picture-perfect life. Her parents, Jonathan and Elaine Caldwell, had built a comfortable existence in Los Angeles, ensuring Natalie never wanted for anything. She was raised to be a woman who inspired envy, not pity. A wife to be cherished, not discarded. But life had other plans. Ironically, it was that same well-heeled background that brought her into the orbit of Ethan Sinclair, a charming, ambitious man from a modest upbringing who was determined to climb the social and financial ladder. They met at a charity gala at the Pacific Heights Club in San Francisco, a swirl of chandeliers and champagne. Ethan was an up-and-coming entrepreneur at the time, brimming with restless energy. There was an instant spark. Natalie found his drive refreshing, a stark contrast to the entitled airs she often encountered. He made her feel alive, like she was stepping into a love story that defied expectation. He, for his part, admired her poise and insider connections. They were an unlikely duo, but for a few sweet years it seemed they were building a true partnership. Yet success can be a double-edged sword. Ethan's tech startup soared beyond their wildest dreams, transforming him into a rising star among venture capitalists. He soon became a millionaire, hobnobbing with celebrities and financiers, always hustling to sign the next big deal. The man who once whispered about forever in her ear began speaking only of stock options, acquisitions, and market shares. As his fortune grew, so did the pressures and temptations. Natalie couldn't pinpoint the exact moment the marriage cracked, but it started with late-night meetings that bled into weekend business trips. At first, she had told herself it was normal, that all great men had to make sacrifices, that she could be patient. Over time, Ethan's once warm gaze toward her cooled into distant politeness. When rumors of his infidelity first reached Natalie's ears, she dismissed them as petty gossip. She was his wife, after all, his partner, the woman who had believed in him before the world did. She wanted to believe Ethan was still the man who used to send her silly text messages from across a crowded room just to say he loved her. But lies have a way of seeping through even the strongest walls. By their 4th anniversary, she could no longer deny the changes in him, the absence, the secrecy, the perfume on his collar that wasn't hers. And now, as she sits in the heart of the city's most exclusive restaurant, her laughter ringing out in stark contrast to the hollow, brittle silence that had once filled their marital home, Ethan Sinclair is about to learn a truth that should terrify any man who ever underestimated the woman he betrayed. Friends whispered about a mysterious woman spotted in Ethan's luxury car, or a pair of extravagantly sexy heels found in his penthouse office. Each day, the sense of betrayal deepened. A year ago, after tearful confrontations and painful revelations, they finally divorced. The legal battle was brief. Ethan offered a substantial settlement, as if money could wash away guilt. Embittered and heartbroken, Natalie moved back to her parents' home in Los Angeles for a while, licking her wounds in relative privacy. The tabloids caught wind of the divorce, painting it as another fairy tale union gone sour. In the immediate aftermath, Ethan seemed to revel in his bachelor status. Papped by photographers at exclusive clubs, he was typically seen with a statuesque brunette on his arm. Her name, it turned out, was Vanessa Hayes, an aspiring model from a small town, hungry for a taste of the good life. She clung to him in paparazzi photos, her sultry expressions a stark contrast to Natalie's more refined style. Natalie tried to ignore the swirl of rumors about how happy Ethan was. Instead, she focused on rebuilding her life. She took a new job, coordinating philanthropic events for a major NGO, throwing herself into charity work. In those volunteer circles, she found a sense of purpose that dulled the sting of her broken marriage. Still, no amount of philanthropic triumphs or supportive friends could entirely banish the hurt. In quiet moments, she remembered how she and Ethan had once daydreamed about traveling the world together, raising a family, forging philanthropic endeavors of their own. Now, all that remained was a string of regrets and a white gold band gathering dust in her jewelry box. It was during one of those philanthropic events that she crossed paths with Ryan Whitaker, a handsome and self-made CEO with an international chain of high-end hotels. She was planning a large fundraiser for an education charity, and Ryan's conglomerate had pledged a significant donation. Over weeks of collaboration, Ryan proved himself to be more than just an aloof businessman. He was surprisingly down-to-earth, with a kind smile that reached his hazel eyes. Though Natalie was wary of wealthy alpha types after her ordeal with Ethan, Ryan's respectful attentiveness slowly chipped away at her defenses. One evening, after a successful charity gala, Ryan asked her to dinner. She hesitated, feeling the familiar pang of vulnerability. But something about Ryan's sincerity made her say yes. She vowed to keep it casual, just two professionals celebrating a job well done. She had no inkling that dinner would become the stage for a dramatic confrontation. Nor did she suspect that her ex-husband and his mistress would be dining in the very same restaurant, their worlds colliding in a way neither had foreseen. None of them could have anticipated it. High-end restaurants in San Francisco often boasted opulent decor, but Le Jardin took luxury to another level. The establishment was known for its gold-leaf ceiling, hand-blown glass chandeliers, and a wait list that could stretch for months. Patrons shelled out thousands of dollars for a single meal, savoring artful plates prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. For the city's elite, this wasn't just a restaurant, it was a statement. A place where power dined, where fortunes were flaunted, and where appearances mattered more than the food on the plate. Ethan Sinclair walked in with Vanessa Hayes on his arm. He was accustomed to turning heads in such environments, and tonight was no exception. Dressed in a sleek Italian suit, he exuded the confidence of a man who had conquered the business world. He carried himself with the ease of someone who had spent years perfecting the role of success, every gesture measured, every glance calculated. The hostess, recognizing him as a VIP client, escorted them to an exclusive corner table near the panoramic window overlooking the city's skyline. Ethan felt a flush of pride as diners glanced their way, a tangible reminder of his success. The murmur of admiration, the subtle nods from other powerful men, it was all fuel for the image he had meticulously built. Vanessa, draped in a figure-hugging black gown, sipped from a glass of champagne. She cast an adoring gaze at Ethan, all too aware that half the dining room was watching them. This was precisely the kind of glamorous life she had always coveted: caviar, champagne, and a wealthy partner who showered her with lavish gifts. To her, luxury wasn't just comfort, it was validation. She savored every second of it, from the hush of the maître's voice when addressing them to the swirl of paparazzi who sometimes lurked outside. She wanted to be envied, desired, wanted the world to see that she had secured her place beside a man like Ethan Sinclair. As they browsed the menu discussing their upcoming trip to St. Bart's, Vanessa angled her phone to snap a discreet selfie. She knew exactly how to capture the perfect shot, her diamond bracelet catching the candlelight, Ethan's chiseled profile in the background, a subtle smirk on her lips as if to say, "This is my life now." Ethan gently took her hand, cautioning her to keep a low profile. While he reveled in success, he preferred carefully managed publicity, especially after the fiasco of his messy divorce. Vanessa pouted but complied. She understood that the real prize was continuing her association with him, not a fleeting viral post. Ethan wasn't just another rich boyfriend. He was a stepping stone to the kind of life she had always dreamed of. Meanwhile, across the restaurant, the hostess was guiding Ryan Whitaker and Natalie Caldwell to a similarly exclusive table. Ryan, possessing the quiet confidence of a man who had built an empire from scratch, wore a perfectly tailored navy suit. Unlike Ethan's carefully curated presence, Ryan's confidence was effortless, unaffected by the need to impress. Natalie glided beside him in an elegant, deep blue gown that highlighted her figure without being ostentatious. She was breathtaking, but not in a way that demanded attention. Rather, she carried an aura of quiet strength, a woman who had been broken and rebuilt herself stronger. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Ryan was not only a supportive philanthropic partner, but also a man she found increasingly intriguing. There was a steadiness to him, a kind of reliability that felt foreign after the chaos of her marriage. The table Ryan had reserved was near the center of the dining room, giving them an unobstructed view of the flamboyant setting. Soft candlelight danced across polished cutlery as they settled in. Neither of them noticed the sharp inhale that came from across the room. Neither of them saw the moment Ethan Sinclair turned his head and froze. Natalie folded her hands on her lap, steeling herself too. Natalie remained poised. She sensed that Ryan's invitation might be more than just a casual meal, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for anything deeper. Their conversation began with light banter about the successful charity fundraiser, drifting into Ryan's plans to expand his hotel chain in Asia. Natalie chimed in about philanthropic outreach in those regions, her eyes lighting up as she described potential partnerships. Ryan found her passion infectious. It was a refreshing change from the many gold diggers he'd encountered in his climb to CEO status. Halfway through their amuse-bouche, Ryan offered her a toast. "To you, Natalie," he said, "for reminding me that business can be about more than profit. You've helped me see how much good we can do for education worldwide." Natalie's cheeks warmed. "You give me too much credit, Ryan. I just help connect the right donors with the right causes." Their glasses clinked softly, and for a moment their eyes locked in an unspoken acknowledgement that something deeper connected them than professional synergy. Natalie felt her heart flutter, a sensation she hadn't experienced since well before her divorce. Perhaps she was ready to explore new possibilities after all. On the opposite side of the restaurant, however, tensions were brewing. Vanessa, scanning the room with the practiced cunning of a social climber, stiffened. She thought she recognized someone. Leaning across the table, she murmured to Ethan, "Is that your ex-wife over there?" By the center arrangement. Ethan's gaze followed Vanessa's pointed look. When he saw Natalie's familiar profile, elegantly poised beside a man he recognized as Ryan Whitaker, the powerful hotel magnate, shock rippled through him. The ex-wife he had so callously tossed aside was here, dressed to the nines, smiling warmly at a man who dwarfed Ethan in net worth. A pang of unexpected jealousy coiled in his chest, followed by a mixture of anger and intrigue. Trying to mask his emotions, Ethan forced a chuckle. "What a small world," he said, though his voice sounded tight to his own ears. This was no random coffee shop or casual bistro. Le Jardin was a fortress of exclusivity. People who dined here were among the elite of the elite. The last person he wanted to see was Natalie, especially not in the company of someone as influential and wealthy as Ryan Whitaker. Vanessa arched a manicured eyebrow, an almost feline grin curling her lips. "Maybe we should say hello," she suggested, her tone dripping with false innocence. "It's only polite to greet an ex-spouse and her friend." Ethan drained his champagne flute. "We'll see," he muttered, eyeing Natalie's table with mounting unease. If there was one thing he despised, it was feeling overshadowed, and Ryan Whitaker's presence threatened exactly that. It wasn't just that Ryan was wealthy, Ethan was too. But there was something infuriatingly effortless about the way Ryan carried himself, as if power and influence were second nature to him. It made Ethan's own carefully curated confidence feel strangely hollow. Part of Ethan wanted to march over and stake a claim on his social territory, but he realized any such confrontation could spiral quickly. He could already see the headlines: "Billionaire meltdown at Le Jardin, jealous ex causes scene." He was not going to be that man. As the waitstaff flitted around delivering sumptuous plates of Wagyu beef and lobster risotto, two separate tables braced for collision. Natalie had no clue Ethan was there, mere steps away, feeling the scorching sting of envy. She was too caught up in the easy rhythm of conversation, her laugh ringing out like a melody Ethan hadn't heard in years. Ryan, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware that the CEO of a tech startup, and Natalie's ex-husband, was studying them from afar. In just a few moments, this carefully curated world of fine dining would descend into a swirl of old resentments and new temptations. The night was young, and sparks were about to fly in ways none of them could have predicted. Ethan's entire body felt on edge. He kept glancing toward Natalie's table, attempting to gauge the intimacy level between her and Ryan Whitaker. Was this a business dinner, or something more? The way Ryan leaned in, the way Natalie tilted her head toward him, it sent a prickle of irritation down Ethan's spine. Vanessa, keen to exploit the drama, periodically whispered commentary into Ethan's ear. "They look pretty cozy, don't they?" she mused, her voice dripping with amusement. Or, "He must be paying for all those diamonds she's wearing." She was referring to the delicate diamond drop earrings that had once been a gift from Ethan himself. A part of him had expected never to see them again, but there they were, glittering against Natalie's skin. Did she still wear them because she liked them? Or was it simply that they matched the occasion? The not knowing gnawed at him. Her sly remarks sent Ethan's jaw into a tighter clench each time. A part of him wanted to dismiss the jealousy as irrational. After all, wasn't he the one who had ended things and moved on with Vanessa? Wasn't he the one who had told himself that Natalie was just a chapter in his past? Yet seeing Natalie in the glamorous glow of Le Jardin, looking more confident than ever while sitting beside a man with as much power and wealth, if not more, ignited a possessiveness he hadn't anticipated. She didn't look like a woman recovering from heartbreak. She looked like a woman who had already moved on. Finally, after picking at his caviar-studded appetizer, Ethan decided he could no longer sit by and watch. He rose from his chair, ignoring Vanessa's half-smile of triumph. "I'm going to say hello," he announced, though the words felt forced even to himself, as if saying it out loud could make it seem casual. "I'd like to keep things civil." Vanessa's red-painted lips twitched with amusement. "Civil? How boring," she purred. "By all means, go stir the pot." She swirled her wine lazily, watching him like a spectator at a show she had been waiting to enjoy. A swirl of tension coiled in Ethan's chest as he wound through the tables, trying not to look like a man on a mission. His heartbeat drummed in his ears, a foreign sensation. He was not used to feeling unsteady. His footsteps grew heavier as he neared the center of the room. Within seconds, he stood near Ryan and Natalie's table. Up close, the scene was even more intimate than it appeared from afar. Ryan leaned in slightly as Natalie described something that made her eyes light up with passion. Her hand brushed the stem of her wine glass, her fingers relaxed, her expression utterly at ease. Ethan cleared his throat. Natalie's gaze snapped upward the moment she recognized him. Her expression shifted from surprise to composure, the veneer of politeness sliding into place. For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Shock, maybe, or something else. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a cool, unreadable gaze. "Ethan," she said, inclining her head, "I didn't expect to see you here." Ryan Whitaker, who had been halfway through a chuckle, grew quiet. His hazel eyes flickered with curiosity as he assessed the newcomer. He'd heard hints that Natalie's divorce had involved a wealthy tech entrepreneur, but he had never met Ethan Sinclair in person. Offering a polite nod, Ryan extended a hand. "Good evening, I'm Ryan Whitaker." Ethan shook his hand, noting the firm grip that spoke of confidence. "Ethan Sinclair, I believe we've heard each other's names around town," he said. Beneath the surface pleasantries, Ethan's thoughts churned. This is the man who's replaced me in Natalie's life. Natalie mustered her calm. "How have you been, Ethan?" she asked, genuinely hoping to keep this encounter from turning ugly. She had hoped her ex-husband wouldn't approach, but she knew a confrontation of some kind was inevitable. Ethan forced a smile. Busy as usual. Expanding business. His gaze flicked around the gilded restaurant before landing back on her. "I see you're out for a nice evening yourselves," he added, gesturing slightly as though to highlight the extravagance he was so familiar with. Ryan nodded, not missing Ethan's slight edge. Yes, we were celebrating a recent charitable milestone. Natalie here was instrumental in raising funds for some new education initiatives. Ethan's lips tightened. He remembered a time when he and Natalie had done philanthropic work together, but that was before his empire ballooned and time for genuine giving shrank. "That's nice," he offered flatly. Natalie caught the flicker of resentment in Ethan's eyes. She recognized it from the last months of their marriage, an anger that bristled whenever he felt overshadowed or left behind. She tried to maintain a polite facade, bracing for him to say something cutting. The last thing she wanted was a scene in front of Ryan or the prying eyes of the restaurant's elite clientele. Just then, Vanessa appeared behind Ethan, hooking an arm through his. She smiled sweetly, though her eyes gleamed with mischief. "Hello?" she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand to Ryan. "I'm Vanessa Hayes, Ethan's companion." The emphasis on companion was not lost on Natalie. Vanessa turned to Natalie with a slight smirk. "And you must be the ex-wife. Pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much." Natalie remained poised, though her stomach churned. Natalie recognized Vanessa from tabloid photos. Sleek, model-esque, the kind of woman who thrived in the spotlight, unbothered by whispers of scandal. She was everything Natalie was not, loud where Natalie was restrained, bold where Natalie was poised. And yet, here they were, tangled in the same web. For a brief second, an image flashed through Natalie's mind. Vanessa draped over Ethan in some glossy magazine spread, while reporters speculated whether she had been the reason for their divorce. Now, that woman was standing inches away, smirking like she had won. "Charmed," Natalie said, forcing herself to remain civil. Ryan observed the tension, his brow furrowing with concern. Without hesitation, he placed a supportive hand on Natalie's back, a simple gesture, yet one that spoke volumes, a quiet reassurance, a statement. It didn't go unnoticed by Ethan. His jaw tightened. The possessiveness he had fought to suppress all evening surged to the surface, unbidden and unwelcome. "Since we've all introduced ourselves, why don't you two join us for a moment?" Ryan suggested, attempting to diffuse the awkwardness. "It's not every day we run into friends at Le Jardin." Natalie almost choked on her champagne. "Friends?" That was generous, but she managed to keep a pleasant expression. Ethan, seeing a chance to assert some control, quickly agreed. Vanessa cast a triumphant glance at Natalie, as though she'd been invited into some personal ring where she could flaunt her hold on Ethan. Her manicured fingers grazed his wrist possessively, a deliberate display. Reluctantly, Natalie scooted her chair to make space. Her heart pounded, nerves jangling. This was a mistake, a disaster waiting to unfold. Ryan signaled a waiter for extra seats, inadvertently setting the stage for a swirl of emotions they were all ill-prepared to handle. As the new seating was arranged, the luxurious surroundings grew charged with tension. Mirrored walls reflected a quartet of people tied together by messy threads of love, betrayal, and budding new desires. It was like a cruel joke, a perfectly staged tableau of unfinished business. The staff discreetly withdrew, sensing the friction. The next words exchanged at that table would shape all their futures in ways none of them could yet fathom. With the four of them gathered around a single candlelit table, Le Jardin's opulence felt too close, too intense, like a gilded cage. The chandeliers above shimmered, casting fractured light across crystal glasses and polished silverware. It felt almost theatrical, as if they were actors in some twisted social experiment. Natalie sat stiffly, wishing she were anywhere else. She could feel Ethan's gaze flicker between her and Ryan, an unspoken challenge crackling in the air. Yet as Ryan offered a gracious smile and signaled the waiter to bring fresh wine glasses, she realized there was no graceful retreat. To leave abruptly might fan the flames of gossip, and Natalie Caldwell refused to be the woman who ran. Vanessa wasted no time. She leaned forward, batting her lashes. "This place is absolutely stunning," she cooed, her voice as sweet as poisoned honey. Then, with calculated innocence, she twisted the knife. "Ethan and I come here often, don't we, darling?" Natalie felt the words before she even processed them, sharp, deliberate, meant to provoke. Ethan nodded curtly, his thoughts visibly elsewhere. For once, he wasn't indulging Vanessa's theatrics. He was too preoccupied watching Natalie. He kept glancing toward Ryan, sizing him up, comparing their suits, their presence, even their mannerisms. The way Ryan's fingers brushed lightly against the stem of his wine glass, utterly at ease. The way he angled his body toward Natalie, like she was the only person in the room worth paying attention to. Ethan hated it. His heart pounded with the raw, unexpected jealousy he felt at seeing Ryan's protective stance toward Natalie. Had he ever looked at her that way? Had he ever made her feel that secure, that wanted? Or had he been too consumed with chasing more money, more status, more women, to notice what he was losing? Trying to salvage some civility, Ryan cleared his throat. I've heard the chef here is crafting a new tasting menu soon. Perhaps we should sample it sometime? A neutral topic, a lifeline. But beneath the polished words, the undercurrents remained. He suggested, directing the comment more toward Natalie. Natalie forced a polite nod. She noticed Vanessa studying Ryan's watch, an exquisite Swiss timepiece worth more than some people's yearly salaries, and felt a twist of annoyance. She's probably measuring him up the same way she sized up Ethan, Natalie thought. That realization sparked a flicker of empathy for Ethan. Had Vanessa latched onto him just as soon as his star began to rise? Yet was that empathy enough to overshadow the pain of their past? Hardly. Vanessa took a dainty sip of champagne. Ryan, she began, faking casual interest. It's Ryan Whitaker, right? CEO of Whitaker Hotels? Ryan nodded, the corners of his mouth tightening just a fraction. That's correct. And you must be forging quite a path in the modeling world. Vanessa's eyelashes fluttered. Oh, well, I dabble in print ads here and there, but I'm mostly devoted to philanthropic causes with Ethan. She paused, letting the words sink in, much like Natalie used to do with Ethan. The jab was subtle, but the message was clear. You're old news, Natalie. I've taken your place. Natalie's cheeks burned, but she maintained her composure. She refused to stoop to catty remarks, even if her stomach churned with anger. Ryan gently tapped Natalie's hand under the table, a small gesture of reassurance. She appreciated it more than words could convey. Ethan, however, noticed the movement, and his eyes flashed with something akin to regret. Had he pushed away someone who genuinely cared about him for a woman who seemed enthralled by status and wealth? He decided to redirect the conversation. So, Ryan, I understand you're expanding into Southeast Asia soon. Must be quite an undertaking. Ryan responded with professional ease, describing his new hotels in Singapore and Hong Kong, the philanthropic programs his company sponsored for local communities, and the complexities of working across different cultures. Natalie chimed in, referencing her experience coordinating events for an educational NGO in those regions. Their synergy was evident, and a natural camaraderie sparkled between them. Listening to Natalie speak with knowledge and passion stirred an odd ache in Ethan. She had always been bright and driven, qualities that once pulled him in. He recalled how, in the early days of their marriage, he found her philanthropic zeal almost more captivating than her beauty. But success had changed him, and he suspected it had changed her too, though in different ways. Vanessa? Vanessa sensed Ethan's distraction. She placed a manicured hand on his arm, smiling. Ethan's also been traveling a lot, darling. He's looking into new offices in Dubai. She cast a quick glance at Ryan's watch, then at his face, trying to gauge if he was impressed. Ethan forced a smile, reluctant to show vulnerability. Yes, Dubai. We've got major investors there. He tossed out some remarks about global expansions, but the spark in his voice was absent. The conversation lulled, the tension thick in the air. Then, unexpectedly, a man approached the table. He was the maitre d', accompanied by a discreet staff member who murmured something about a disturbance with paparazzi outside. The maitre d' offered a hushed apology, explaining that a few recognized faces in the restaurant tonight had drawn media attention. Shall we move you to a private lounge? He asked politely, glancing between Ryan Whitaker and Ethan Sinclair. We want to ensure your privacy and that of your guests. Natalie's heart skipped. She knew any paparazzi photos of the four of them together could spawn a tabloid frenzy. Ryan glanced at her, reading her concern. We'd appreciate that, he replied. They rose, the staff leading them through a side corridor into a more secluded, plush lounge area, enclosed by velvet curtains. A grand piano stood in the corner, unoccupied, while soft jazz piped through hidden speakers. The lighting was dimmer, more intimate, heightening the sense of claustrophobia. Vanessa perched on a velvet settee, crossing her legs elegantly, looking all too pleased with this VIP detour. Ethan stood by her side but cast frequent glances toward Natalie and Ryan, who seated themselves on a nearby chaise. The staff offered fresh champagne. No one refused. Each sip seemed to sharpen the undercurrents coursing between them. At last, Ryan broke the silence. "Well, this is unexpected." He managed a wry smile at Natalie, who returned a slight shrug. She wanted to vanish into the floor, but she also felt an unspoken resolve to show that she wasn't cowed by Ethan or his mistress. Vanessa decided to stir the pot. "I recall reading about your divorce settlement, Natalie. Very hush-hush, but these things always leak eventually, don't they?" Her question was directed at Ryan, as though inviting him to speculate. Natalie stiffened, rage boiling beneath her cool exterior. Ryan frowned. "That's personal, Miss Hayes," he said, his voice firm. "I'm sure none of us want to indulge in gossip." Vanessa's lips parted in a slow, cat-like smile. Her gaze flickered toward Ryan, then back to Natalie, as if calculating her next move. She thrived on spectacle, and Ethan could see it in the amused glint in her eyes. "Of course, my apologies." The apology rang hollow. Thinly veiled sarcasm dripped from every syllable. Ethan felt an inward lurch of guilt. Had he truly allowed someone so catty and shallow into his life? Had he mistaken confidence for depth, charm for substance? Yet his pride wouldn't let him denounce her in front of Ryan and Natalie. Not yet. Instead, he redirected the topic. "So, Ryan, how do you manage to balance personal life with a global empire?" The shift in conversation was transparent, but Ryan played along with effortless composure. Ryan responded with gracious politeness, describing how he delegated tasks, remained in contact with philanthropic boards, and tried to preserve personal time. Natalie listened, reminded again of the synergy between them. Philanthropy, business, a sense of purpose. She cast a fleeting glance at Ethan, her expression unreadable. Once upon a time, they had shared a vision of building success for a greater good. They had whispered about starting a foundation, about creating something bigger than themselves. But that dream had been buried beneath broken promises and misplaced priorities. Now, all that remained was this odd show of one-upmanship. The hush of the lounge's intimacy offered no escape from the swirling emotions. They sipped their champagne, each one grappling with regrets, insecurities, or anger. And somewhere outside, cameras flashed, capturing fragments of the night's drama for the tabloids to twist and turn. Inside the private lounge, the tension had crystallized. Vanessa, determined not to be overshadowed, peppered Ryan with questions about his philanthropic efforts. She tried to align herself with him, making vague claims of her own charitable interests, something about children's education, though she fumbled when pressed for specifics. Ethan hovered beside her, his mind churning. The contrast was stark. Ryan and Natalie spoke about these causes with ease, with purpose. Vanessa, on the other hand, treated the conversation like a performance, a rehearsed monologue she hadn't quite memorized. Ethan realized how forced Vanessa's conversation seemed, especially compared to the genuine passion Natalie and Ryan shared for these causes. It hit him then, a sharp, uncomfortable truth. Natalie hadn't just moved on, she had moved upward. And Ethan had simply moved sideways. Finally, Ryan stood, offering a polite bow of his head. "I need a moment to talk to the maître about ensuring our privacy," he explained. Then, turning to Natalie, his voice softer, more personal, "Would you care to join me?" He wanted to give her an out, an escape from this claustrophobic arrangement. She accepted, offering Ethan one last unreadable glance before following Ryan toward the maître d', leaving Ethan and Vanessa momentarily alone on the plush settee. The silence between them was thick enough to slice. Vanessa fiddled with her phone, as though considering a quick selfie to capture her glamorous surroundings. Her reflection shimmered in the mirrored wall beside them. A woman perfectly styled, perfectly poised, perfectly hollow. Ethan's thoughts swirled with regrets. He didn't want to be with a woman who only saw him as a wallet and a stepping stone to fame. He had built an empire, yet somehow he had become the accessory in someone else's ambitions. Yet part of him had chosen this path, drawn to the superficial allure when his marriage was failing. Impulsively, he reached for Vanessa's phone, lowering it. "Enough pictures, please." For the first time all night, his voice carried no pretense, no charm, just quiet, exhausted finality. He muttered. A flicker of annoyance crossed Vanessa's features, but she complied. "I just wanted one quick." "I said enough." Ethan's voice had an edge that startled even himself. He exhaled, forcing calm. Sorry, it's just, this is complicated. Vanessa angled her body toward him. Ethan, she said softly, touching his arm, is seeing Natalie with that CEO messing with your head? He twitched, uncomfortable with the question, but Vanessa pressed on. Look, I get it. Exes can stir up feelings, especially if they're doing better than you expected. But remember, you're successful too. I'm by your side. Don't let some old flame overshadow what we have. Her words, meant to reassure, only added to his turmoil. He wasn't sure what he had with Vanessa. She liked the parties, the trips, the lavish gifts, but did she care about him, the man beneath the money? He recalled Natalie's unwavering support in his startup days, how she believed in him before the world did. The wave of longing nearly choked him. He brushed Vanessa's hand away gently. Let's not discuss it now. They'll be back soon. He forced a half smile, but his eyes betrayed conflict. Vanessa, not one to let her territory be threatened, concealed her frustration behind a poised facade. Across the lounge, Ryan and Natalie spoke with the maitre d'. While Ryan handled the logistics, Natalie's eyes darted back to the settee, anxious about leaving Ethan and Vanessa alone. She worried Vanessa might stir drama. Ryan noticed her unease. Everything all right? She mustered a small, tense smile. I'm fine. Just never expected to dine with my ex-husband and his mistress tonight. Ryan exhaled sympathetically. That's a lot to handle. If you want, we can leave. I'm sure I can arrange a discreet exit. Natalie considered it. She craved an escape. But something inside her also wanted closure. Perhaps facing Ethan and Vanessa was a step toward healing. Let's just wrap this up gracefully, she decided. We can say our goodbyes and go. Ryan admired her poise. You're braver than you think, he murmured. She felt a flutter of warmth at his quiet praise. They returned to the table, where Ethan had adopted a stiff posture next to Vanessa. Tension lingered in the air like a static charge. Natalie cleared her throat. I think Ryan and I will be heading out soon. We have an early morning event tomorrow. Ethan nodded, relief mixing with an odd disappointment. Vanessa pursed her lips, eyeing Natalie's gown. Her gaze lingered just long enough to be dismissive, as if silently critiquing every inch of the fabric. Shame, the night's young. Are you sure you don't want to stay and catch up more? Her tone dripped with sarcasm. She seemed to enjoy prodding Natalie's discomfort. A viper in silk, toying with its prey. Ryan interjected smoothly. Natalie's philanthropic schedule keeps her busy. We'd hate to overstay. His words were polite, but his tone left no room for argument. This conversation was over. He turned to Ethan, extending a hand. It was interesting to meet you. Best of luck with your expansions. Ethan forced a polite nod. Yes, likewise. Maybe we'll cross paths again. The words felt hollow, but he tried to salvage dignity, as if uttering them could undo the bitter taste in his mouth. Natalie, not trusting herself to speak more than necessary, simply offered Vanessa a cool smile. It wasn't forced. It wasn't performative. It was the kind of effortless composure that made Vanessa's needling feel small, insignificant. Enjoy the rest of your evening, she said, mastering her composure. Vanessa reciprocated with a saccharine grin. Oh, we will, she purred, her fingers tightening around Ethan's wrist as if staking her claim. With that, Ryan placed a gentle hand at the small of Natalie's back, guiding her through the lounge's velvet drapes. The touch was light, respectful, but to Ethan it felt like a brand, a silent declaration that she was no longer his to protect, to claim, to love. A staff member led them to a discreet exit, away from paparazzi. As they slipped into the elevator, Natalie breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Ryan studied her profile. You're handling this with remarkable grace. I know it's not easy. She gave him a wry half-smile. Grace is just controlled panic, she murmured. But I appreciate you stepping in. If you weren't there, I might have lost my cool. An unspoken gratitude flickered between them, a sense that Ryan was more than just a philanthropic partner or dinner date. He might be a quiet ally in her pursuit of healing. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Meanwhile, in the lounge, Ethan signaled the staff to bring him a stiff drink. Vanessa rubbed his shoulder in what she deemed a comforting gesture. That went well, she mused, swirling the last of her champagne. She seemed a little rattled, don't you think? Ethan didn't answer. He stared at the empty corridor where Natalie had disappeared, a turmoil roaring in his chest, jealousy, regret, and an oddly protective longing. He wasn't sure which feeling was worse. Vanessa, sensing his mood, cooed softly. Don't dwell on your ex. We have a flight to St. Bart's soon, remember? Let's focus on us. Ethan tore his gaze from the drapes, forcing a half smile. Us. The word felt foreign. Vanessa represented everything he had once thought he wanted. Excitement, indulgence, freedom. But now, in the lingering echo of Natalie's presence, all of it felt hollow. Yeah, us. But in the back of his mind, Natalie's poised face haunted him. Not the face of the woman he had left behind, but the one who had moved forward without him. He had once had her support, her love. Now she was forging a new path with a man who seemed to appreciate every aspect of her. And Ethan was left wondering if he had ever truly understood what he had lost. The finality of it gnawed at him, a reminder of the cracks he had allowed to form in his once promising marriage. As the lounge's low jazz tunes resumed, two very different couples wrestled with unspoken truths. One pair left the shimmering walls behind, stepping into a city full of infinite possibility. The other remained, trapped in a world that suddenly felt far too small. The other remained anchored to illusions of a glamorous life, burdened by a growing suspicion that everything glittered far less brightly than before. The tabloids wasted no time, fueling speculation about the unusual four-way dinner at Le Jardin. By the next morning, social media buzzed with photos of Ryan Whitaker escorting Natalie Caldwell out a side door, while Ethan Sinclair and Vanessa Hayes lingered behind. Various outlets spun their own narratives. Wealthy tech entrepreneur caught an awkward run-in with ex-wife and hotel magnate. Or Vanessa Hayes' icy stare, jealous of CEO's flirtation with the former Mrs. Sinclair. Natalie woke to a string of messages from friends who either offered sympathy or wanted juicy details. She responded politely, stating only that it was a coincidence and that everyone remained cordial. Deep down, however, she could still feel the tension vibrating. After grabbing a cup of coffee, she scrolled through the headlines, vowing not to let the media circus drag her back into heartbreak. She was scheduled to meet Ryan at his corporate office that day to finalize a philanthropic partnership. Pausing at her reflection in the hallway mirror, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear. She resolved to keep her composure. Last night's messy entanglement wouldn't overshadow her professional goals. An hour later, she arrived at Whitaker International Tower, a gleaming skyscraper that symbolized Ryan's empire. The executive reception area boasted polished marble floors and minimalist art pieces. A personal assistant guided her to Ryan's private meeting room. She expected a formal atmosphere, but Ryan greeted her with a warm smile. Natalie, thanks for coming. Let's sit down. They discussed the planned scholarship fund, the distribution of resources, and a timeline for official announcements. Despite the business-like topic, an undercurrent of personal concern simmered. Eventually, Ryan broached the subject. How are you holding up after last night? I hope the media hasn't swarmed you. Natalie sighed. The tabloids love to spin narratives, but I'll manage. I just appreciate your support. It could have been ugly if you hadn't been there. Ryan's expression softened. You know you can rely on me. And I'm sorry you had to face that. It's never easy running into an ex, especially one with a complicated history. She gave a grateful nod. I'm lucky I had a real friend by my side. The word friend hung in the air, and Ryan's eyes flickered with an unspoken question. Natalie didn't miss the nuance, but she wasn't prepared to define anything more just yet. Instead, she cleared her throat and returned to philanthropic talk, feeling a swirl of conflicting emotions. Friendship? Something deeper. She needed time to process her feelings. On the opposite side of town, Ethan Sinclair languished in his penthouse, ignoring the business emails piling up. He was due to jet to St. Bart's with Vanessa in 3 days, but the prospect no longer thrilled him. Instead, he found himself replaying the sight of Natalie with Ryan Whitaker. She seemed truly happy. A pang of regret hit him like a gut punch. Vanessa swanned about the living room, instructing the house staff on which outfits to pack. Every now and then, she tried to engage Ethan. What do you think of this bathing suit? Or should I bring the diamond set you gave me last month? He gave half-hearted replies, stirring a growing dissatisfaction within her. She sensed his heart wasn't in the upcoming trip. Finally, she plumped herself down on the couch beside him, crossing her arms. Ethan, you've been moody ever since we left Le Jardin. She narrowed her eyes. Is it Natalie? Are you jealous or something? His knee-jerk reaction was to deny. I'm not jealous, he said tightly. But even as he spoke, an internal voice told him otherwise. He was envious of Ryan's unbridled success, sure, but also of the genuine connection Ryan and Natalie seemed to share. I don't like how the press is twisting things, Vanessa huffed. Let them talk. We've got a flight to paradise soon. Focus on that. She stood, tossing her hair. I need to pick up some last-minute items on Fifth Avenue. Join me? Ethan shook his head, feigning busyness. I have calls. Disappointed but unwilling to waste her day, Vanessa left. Alone, Ethan mulled over the irony. He was the one who had ended his marriage for a freer, more glamorous life. Now, he found himself unfulfilled, craving something deeper. He recalled how Natalie once believed in him unconditionally, how they'd share late-night conversations about using their wealth to make a difference. With Vanessa, those discussions never arose, unless they served some PR angle. Impulsively, Ethan grabbed his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't used since the divorce. Jessica Morgan, a mutual friend who had remained closer to Natalie after everything fell apart. Jessica was known for her level-headed advice. Perhaps Ethan just needed to hear from someone who understood the real Natalie. He hesitated, then typed a quick message. Hey Jess, it's Ethan. I know it's been a while. Could we talk? Seconds turned to minutes. Just when he assumed Jessica would ignore him, a reply popped up. This is unexpected. Are you okay? Ethan exhaled shakily. He typed back. Not really. Need some perspective. She responded with a short directive. Meet me at Bayview Cafe, 4 p.m. tomorrow. Ethan set down the phone, feeling a swirl of relief and anxiety. Jessica was notoriously blunt. If he sought perspective, she'd give it, whether or not it was comfortable. Still, he wanted clarity. About his feelings for Natalie, about his life with Vanessa. Something had to give, or he risked sinking further into regret. He trudged to the bedroom window, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline he'd once found so thrilling. Now, each glimmering building seemed to mock him. Wealth and success had never felt so hollow, and as the hours ticked by, a single truth pressed on him. He might have lost something priceless, and it might be too late to reclaim it. The next afternoon, Ethan arrived at Bayview Cafe, a cozy spot near the waterfront that bustled with young professionals on lunch breaks. He spotted Jessica Morgan in a corner booth, sipping a latte. She was flipping through a magazine, her wavy brown hair framing a face etched with skepticism. When she caught sight of Ethan, her lips pressed into a tight line. Neither a smile nor a frown, more like measured neutrality. Ethan slid into the seat opposite her. The lingering scent of espresso grounded him somewhat, but his nerves flickered. Jessica set the magazine aside, crossing her arms. You said you needed perspective, she began bluntly. So talk. He rubbed his temples, searching for the right words. I ran into Natalie last night, at Le Jardin. Jessica's expression didn't change. She was with Ryan Whitaker. He explained the swirl of tension, the forced conversation, and how it sparked an unsettling jealousy he hadn't foreseen. Jessica arched an eyebrow. Well, you ended the marriage, remember? If she's moved on, that's within her rights. Ethan winced. I know. It's not that I don't want her to be happy. I do. But seeing them together made me realize that maybe I messed up. Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. The weight of his own words settled on him like an overdue reckoning. I never properly appreciated what Natalie and I had. Jessica's gaze sharpened. Let me guess. Now that you see her with a man who's possibly more successful and philanthropic than you, it's chafing your ego. The pointed observation stung, not because it was unfair, but because it was uncomfortably accurate. Ethan's shoulders slumped. I suppose so, he admitted softly. I hate feeling overshadowed. But it's more than that. Nat is not just some trophy I can't have. She was real. He looked down, voice thick with regret. We built something together. It wasn't just about money or appearances. It was a partnership, and I can't help but wonder if I threw it away too easily. Jessica studied him for a moment, her fingers tapping against her coffee cup in quiet assessment. So, what about Vanessa? He hesitated. She's fun, he said, but the word felt hollow even as it left his lips. I guess, but it's shallow. His voice lowered, almost like he was admitting the truth to himself for the first time. I realize I've been trying to fill a void with parties and extravagances, with noise. She's not interested in building anything meaningful, At least not from what I see. A long pause. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I love her or if I just love the idea of not being alone. Jessica snorted softly. Wow, there's a healthy foundation for a relationship. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Look, Ethan, you know I took Natalie's side after the divorce because I saw what you did to her. You left her wrecked. And you, she pointed a finger at him, unwavering, were too damn wrapped up in your shiny new millionaire lifestyle to even notice. Ethan swallowed hard. Hearing it put so bluntly made his stomach churn. Jessica's voice softened slightly. So what exactly are you asking me here? If you should try to get her back? His throat tightened. Would it even matter? He let out a humorless laugh. She's with Ryan Whitaker. They look solid. I don't want to sabotage her happiness. Jessica took a slow sip of her latte, watching him carefully. Natalie's a grown woman. She's done with heartbreak, and I know Ryan respects her. She set down her cup, meeting his gaze. If you want to try to reconnect, you better be prepared for the possibility that she might reject you outright, that she might choose Ryan, and that if she does, you don't get to be bitter about it. A pang of dread twisted in Ethan's chest. The thought of seeing Natalie completely slip away, permanently, wasn't something he was ready to accept. So, you think I should just move on? Jessica's expression was unreadable. I think you need to figure out what you truly want, and if you even deserve another chance. She leaned in slightly. But let's be very clear, she owes you nothing. Jessica's voice was firm, unwavering. If you're expecting some kind of easy redemption arc, forget it. And if this is just about your bruised ego, do us all a favor and walk away now. Ethan drew a shaky breath, feeling both gratitude and shame. Jessica always had a way of cutting through the noise, of holding a mirror to his worst tendencies. This was why he had asked for perspective. You're right, he admitted, his voice quiet. The words felt like glass in his throat, but they needed to be said. It's not just ego. I regret how I let success overshadow what mattered. He let out a breath, his hands tightening around the coffee cup. But I don't want to be the villain in her story anymore. Jessica's gaze was oddly sympathetic. Then talk to her, she said. Apologize, without expectations. If there's any chance for a new chapter, it starts with honesty. They spoke for another half hour, dissecting the complexities. Jessica offered a final caution. Don't forget, Ryan's not some fling. He's a powerful man who could give Natalie everything she once dreamed of with you, minus the drama. The words weighed heavily on Ethan, but also crystallized his resolve. After Jessica left, Ethan lingered, staring at the swirling foam in his untouched coffee. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to his assistant. Cancel the St. Bart's trip with Vanessa. If he was going to face the emotional chaos within, he needed to stop running off to tropical distractions. Yet how would Vanessa react? Probably with fury, or worse, cunning. He had to handle that too. But first, he needed to figure out a genuine way to speak with Natalie. Perhaps invite her to coffee. Or, even better, a safe, neutral setting where they could talk alone. He had no illusions that a single conversation could fix everything, but it might be the first step toward redemption. Or final closure. As he left the cafe, a faint sense of clarity accompanied him. The city's hustle and bustle felt less suffocating, more like a symphony of possibilities. He realized that real success wasn't about having the best table at Le Jardin or the flashiest penthouse. It was about forging meaningful connections, living with integrity, and maybe, just maybe, finding a love that endured beyond the novelty of wealth. Ethan stared at his phone, heart pounding. The message he just typed felt too raw, too vulnerable. Natalie, it's Ethan. Could we meet for coffee? Just to talk. He hesitated, hovering over the send button. Memories of their last encounter at Le Jardin flooded his mind. Natalie, radiant and confident, with Ryan Whitaker at her side. A pang of jealousy and regret twisted inside him. But if he wanted any sense of closure or forgiveness, he needed to take this step. Finally, he pressed send. To his surprise, her reply came minutes later. When and where? Relief blended with nerves. He proposed meeting at Golden Gate Park the next day. She agreed, succinct and calm, giving away little about her emotions. That night, Ethan barely slept, torn between hope and dread. The following afternoon, bright sunlight illuminated Golden Gate Park. Families picnicked on the grass. Joggers circled the pond. Ethan chose a bench near the fountain, where the water sprayed in graceful arcs. Clutching a latte he could hardly taste, he scanned the crowd. Soon he spotted. Natalie approached. The cool morning air carried the scent of freshly brewed coffee and damp earth. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, exuding understated elegance. The kind of effortless grace that had always set her apart. Ethan stood as she reached him, searching her face for any sign of warmth. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. She sat on the bench, deliberately leaving space between them. "I'm curious why you wanted to meet," she replied, her voice steady, controlled. Ethan inhaled. For a moment, he thought of all the unspoken regrets that had built up in the months since their divorce. Every sleepless night. Every moment he had convinced himself he had moved on, only to be confronted by the quiet ache that never left. "I needed to apologize properly," he began. "I hurt you in ways I can't fully undo. I let success consume me, and I took our marriage for granted." Natalie's gaze flickered toward the fountain. "I appreciate that," she said, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup, as if grounding herself. "But apologies can't erase everything." He nodded. "I know, I'm not expecting you to forget what happened, or offer me another chance. I just can't keep pretending I'm okay with how we ended. Seeing you at Le Jardin, it shook me." Silence settled between them, punctuated only by the splash of the fountain. Ethan had always hated silence. He was a man of deals, negotiations, fast solutions. But here, in this moment, there was nothing to negotiate. Only the wreckage of what he had lost. Natalie studied his face. She remembered when they were newlyweds, brimming with shared dreams. Late-night talks over takeout, the way he used to write little notes and tuck them into her books. The man who had once held her hand in crowded rooms before he started leaving her behind. But those dreams had dissolved under the weight of Ethan's ambition. "I'm not the same person I was," she said quietly. "I've built a new life, working with charities and, well, connecting with Ryan." A flicker of jealousy crossed Ethan's features, but he forced a wan smile. "He seems like a good man." His voice was even, but Natalie caught the way his fingers curled slightly into fists. "I want you to be happy, truly." Natalie's eyes narrowed, uncertain whether to believe him. "So, why now?" Ethan exhaled, wrestling with the admission. "Because I ended things with Vanessa." She blinked, absorbing that. He hesitated, then looked at her. "I woke up one day and realized I'd surrounded myself with shallow pursuits, rooms full of people, yet I felt completely alone. It took me too long to see that I was chasing something meaningless." He glanced away, his voice thickening. "But seeing you, thriving, passionate about your causes, it reminded me how far I drifted from who I wanted to be." A gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying the weight of words unspoken. Emotions churned in Natalie's chest. Compassion, wariness, and a lingering grief. She cleared her throat. "Ethan, I'm glad you're realizing these things, but it doesn't change the past." He swallowed hard. "I'm not asking for that. I just wanted to own my mistakes, and let you know I admire what you've become. If there's any way I can support your charitable work, I'd like to. Even if we're never together again." Her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you," Natalie said, the sincerity in his words catching her off guard. "That means more than you know." For a moment they fell silent, each recalling better days, before betrayal and heartbreak. A breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and faint laughter echoed from the other side of the park. Eventually, Natalie spoke. "I accept your apology, but I'm moving forward, Ethan, with or without Ryan. I've learned to stand on my own. I hope you find your own path, too." He nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's all I wanted. A chance to make amends, even if it's just words. Thank you for hearing me out." They rose from the bench, coffees untouched. She gave him a small, wistful smile. "Take care of yourself." He offered a hesitant wave, then turned to leave. Natalie stood there, watching him merge into the crowd, uncertain whether to feel relieved or nostalgic. The fountain's rhythmic spray glittered in the sun as she exhaled, heart lighter than before. Maybe, at last, they had the closure they needed, and maybe she was finally free to embrace her future, wherever it led. Weeks passed, and the dramatic run-in at Le Jardin faded from public chatter. Natalie Caldwell immersed herself in her work at the NGO, orchestrating a high-profile charity gala that promised to deliver significant funds for youth education. Each day she woke feeling more assured of who she was. no longer Ethan Sinclair's ex, but a competent, respected organizer in the philanthropic world. She seldom thought of the coffee meeting at Golden Gate Park, yet the conversation lingered in her mind. Ethan's apology had given her a sense of closure. He was no longer a looming shadow of guilt or pain. For once, she felt free to explore new possibilities, without baggage. Ryan Whitaker's presence in her life also intensified. They had continued collaborating on various projects, and with each interaction, she saw more of his sincere character. He was wealthy, yes, but also principled and empathetic. Whenever she felt overwhelmed by event logistics, Ryan was there with practical advice or even a comforting hand on her shoulder. Slowly, the lines between professional and personal blurred. The day of the charity gala arrived. Held in the glittering ballroom of a historic hotel, the event teemed with philanthropists, celebrities, and key influencers. Natalie donned a midnight blue gown, her hair swept into a loose updo. She moved through the crowd, ensuring every detail was perfect. The silent auction, the keynote speakers, the sumptuous dinner service began. On stage, Natalie introduced Ryan for a speech about the impact of strategic giving. His words resonated with the audience, underscoring how wealth could become a tool for societal good. When the program ended, Ryan found Natalie amid the swirling guests. He guided her to a quieter alcove lined with tall windows overlooking the city. "You did an outstanding job," he said, his voice warm. "We surpassed our fundraising goal." She exhaled, adrenaline still coursing through her. "I'm relieved and thrilled. Thank you for all your support. Without your hotel group sponsorship, we wouldn't have reached these numbers." He smiled, stepping closer. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." His tone softened. "When all this settles, can I take you to dinner? A real dinner, not a working meal or a rushed bite in between meetings." His hazel eyes brimmed with earnestness. Natalie felt her cheeks flush. After her divorce, she'd sworn off romance for a while, hesitant to trust again. But Ryan wasn't Ethan. He stood before her with genuine kindness, not just charm. She found herself nodding. "I'd like that very much." They sealed it with a shared laugh, the air tinged with promise. A sense of excitement fluttered in Natalie's chest. Perhaps she was ready for something more than professional camaraderie. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Sinclair stood in front of a modest community center. He had quietly made a major donation, funding new computers and science kits for underprivileged kids, a cause he and Natalie once dreamed of supporting together. Now, he took that dream forward alone, determined to find meaning in giving back. Watching children excitedly explore the newly equipped rooms brought a rare smile to his face. He thought about Natalie, wondering if she'd ever hear about this. Part of him hoped she would. Not for praise, but for a subtle understanding that he was trying to be the man he should have been all along. Later that evening, Ethan returned to his penthouse to find it quiet. Absent were the parties and shallow gatherings that once filled it. He prepared a simple dinner, reflecting on how drastically his priorities had shifted. Vanessa Hayes was long gone, off to the next lavish scene, presumably. And good riddance. Ethan realized that maybe being alone wasn't so bad, if he could fill the emptiness with purpose, whether through volunteer work, therapy, or forging genuine friendships. 1 month after the gala, Natalie and Ryan sat at an intimate corner table in a little-known French bistro. Unlike Le Jardin, this place had no paparazzi lurking, no ornate. The bistro had no extravagant decor, just soft lighting and excellent cuisine. No grand chandeliers, no gold-plated menus, just warmth, authenticity, and the kind of atmosphere where real conversations flourished. Over laughter and shared stories, Natalie and Ryan discovered how much they aligned. The ease between them was undeniable, organic, unforced. It wasn't about status or appearances. It was about something far rarer, something real. From values on philanthropy to personal passions like travel and reading, they found synchronicities in the smallest details. The way they both preferred handwritten letters over emails. The way a well-worn book felt like home. When they finally walked out, hand in hand, Natalie felt lightness flood her heart. Not the fleeting rush of infatuation, but the steady calm of something solid, something worth building. She glanced at the moonlit sky, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. Not long ago she had stood beneath the same sky, feeling utterly lost, feeling as if her world had shattered beyond repair. remembering the heartbreak she once believed was insurmountable. Perhaps life truly could start anew after crushing disappointments. There, under the gentle glow of city lights, she realized she was no longer haunted by the past, no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she had found. She had found a fresh horizon, one shaped by mutual respect, renewed purpose, and the thrilling possibility that this time, love might endure. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of love, betrayal, and the rediscovery of purpose. Natalie's journey reminds us that heartbreak can lead to transformative growth. That true wealth isn't measured by lavish dinners or glittering possessions, but by the strength of our bonds, the depth of our character, and the courage to walk away from what no longer serves us. Even when the past collides unexpectedly with the present, like it did at that fateful restaurant, we always have a choice: to dwell in regret or to step forward into something new. If you were captivated by Natalie, Ethan, and Ryan's story, hit the like button to let us know. Share this video with friends who love poignant, dramatic tales. And be sure to subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the depths of love, ambition, and redemption. Your engagement keeps our channel thriving. What would you have done in Natalie's place? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to bringing you more riveting drama soon.